Welcome into the Cool Grandpa podcast. I'm excited to have you here and joining us this week. We've got a fun conversation coming up. But first, I want to just tease next week's conversation with Doug Schoen. Doug lives in a multi-generational household, and so he's going to share with us his perspective as a grandfather about living in that multi-generational home. The book, My Grandpa's Grandpa, is on sale at 35% off for the rest of this month and into September. So if you would like to buy a copy of that, we can do that and get it out to you lickety-split. Now, this week's guest is Karen Stillman, and if that name rings familiar to you, it's because a few weeks ago we had her on talking about fertility issues and how grandfathers and fathers can be a resource to women and families that are going through that challenge. And so we had a really great conversation, and I've got links to that into the show notes. But this week we are talking to Karen about her granddad and her grandpa daddy. And we are getting her memories of that relationship with both of those gentlemen, as well as talking to her a little bit about, as a mom, her impressions of what her father is doing as a grandfather to her two wonderful children. So this will be a fun conversation. And without further ado, let's get into it. Hi, Karen. Welcome to the Cool Grandpa podcast. I'm excited to have you back on the show.
Hi, Greg. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Now, this is our second interview in probably a couple of months. We had you on before talking about fertility and all the work you do in that important area. But I wanted to have you back on to talk about your grandfathers and your relationship with your grandfathers. So if you don't mind, can you introduce us to your grandfathers? What were their names? Where did they grow up? What did they do? That sort of thing.
Sure. Well, my dad's grandfather, George, I don't know if you want his full name or not, but his name was Grandad. We called him Granddad. And he was a car mechanic in a small town in Nova Scotia on the coast. And he was the scary grandpa. He was the one that frightened me a little bit. As I got older, he didn't live until, I was probably 12 or 14 when he passed. But as a little girl, I remember him, and he was scary grandpa.
Oh, okay.
And then my mom's father, Harry, was in central New Brunswick, an even smaller town, between the church and the general store, stretch of 10 kilometers. If you blinked, you missed the town. And, so Grandpa Daddy, I know, what a mouthful. My friends always tease me about that. Not Grandpa, but Grandpa Daddy. And that was because they had so many kids who lived in the area. So I always heard him called Daddy as well. But he was my grandpa. So we just put the two words together and called him Grandpa Daddy. So it was always a struggle to find a card for him because there's no cards to Grandpa Daddy. And he was in the military when he was young. He was a little guy. And my he died when I was in my first year university. I think we were about the same height. But my grandmother was a 6-foot woman. So it's cute because they were like so disproportionate. As far as what did he do after the military when I was little? Gosh, I couldn't tell you. And I don't know if there was an injury and that's why he went home or what have you. But so I do remember the shed, though, down at the back, way down behind the house. They had a nice piece of property because they didn't live in town. They lived out of town on a nice piece of property. The shed had lots of beer bottles in it.
Oh, that's funny. With him being a little guy in the military, was he in World War II maybe, or
that was
Korea?
it, and the Air Force, because I seen the picture of the light blue military outfit of him wearing it.
Yeah, I was going to say small guys tended to be shoved into little corners where they could operate machine guns or something along those lines.
All that kind of stuff. They didn't like to talk about it when I was little. I don't know why, but that's all I knew. And my brother does has a lot of the pictures and things. So that's where I had, not recently, but had seen pictures.
Oh yeah. Well, and I absolutely love. I'm a like World War II airplane history, guy, and had a chance to go see some of those Lancasters and some of those other planes that those guys would climb into, and it's incredible because it's basically a thick aluminum can that you're sitting into. There's no
A little
like,
scary.
hey, we're going to armor this up and we're going to do this stuff. Is like, no. And you're the little guy, so we're going to stick you back here. So, you're on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. A little scary.
Oh, yeah. And what was interesting when you were talking about Grandpa Daddy is when kids come up with these names for grandchildren. So my wife was trying to explain to her children that then became my children when they were really little. I think it was like, mom's doing the typical, you have to do this because I'm the boss and you've got to, go brush your teeth, go wash your hands, go do, I'm the boss. And the kids were asking questions about, well, who's your boss? And then they figured out that mom's mom was mom's boss. And so they figured out that so she became grandma boss. And yeah. So that was always a fun one. And with the cards too, is like, for grandma, and then the kids would always write out boss after there.
Yeah, we've done that. We've bought cute dad birthday cards and whatever, but and put grandpa daddy. So the daddy was on the card. So we've done that too.
Yeah, I always get a kick out of especially when the grandkids come up with the names for the grandparents.
Yeah,
how
fun.
creative they can do. Now, did you live close to your grandparents, or were they far away? It sounded like you guys were fairly close.
Yes. My mom's parents were only an hour out of town, and growing up, we had a camp near them. Actually, it was just across the street up on the hill. So if mom was trying to do something, shoo, go down the hill and visit your grandmother. Go see what Grandpa Daddy's doing. So it was just, okay, so we just go down the hill. It was a secondary highway, though, that we had to cross. So you're looking left and right for transport trucks, and then you run straight across, which was to the graveyard, and then walk the 2 doors down to their house. So they were close. They were close, especially in the summer. So they were right across the street a lot of the summer. We'd go out on Friday night after work, have supper out there, and leave Sunday after supper and go back into town. So there was a lot of time spent there. My dad's parents were in Nova Scotia, so they were about a 4-hour drive away. So more so long weekends instead for a visit.
Yeah, that's great having them that close. It's
nice.
There's always that balance between what's nice close and what's too close.
Yes, well, that can be, as I had my 2 children within the compound, 2 doors up were the grandparents, and yeah, that's too close. Especially since they didn't do much of the, well, do you want to look after the kids? Oh, no, not till they're older, and we can take them shopping and, take them hunting and do all sorts of things. Yeah, I suppose if you have to do something, I can, walk the baby or whatever, but there wasn't much of anything else, even though they were 2 doors up.
Right. Oh, that's funny. Now, what were some of your earliest memories of your grandfathers?
Grandpa Daddy, really early on, sitting out on the porch or sitting at the kitchen table, playing crib with him, playing cards with him. We started off playing probably Go Fish and Crazy Eights. But I think his favorite game was crib, and he liked to play it. And the funniest thing that I can remember is when I got a little bit older, wondering, how come Grandpa Daddy always won? And I don't think it was malicious. I think it was more so to see if he could get caught, because he cheated. 15-2 and he'd take 3 points, 31 for 2 and he'd take 3 points, and you wouldn't notice it because he would be counting, there's my points, and he would start pegging them off, and you'd look at your hand to start yours, and you wouldn't see him take the 2 extra points here and there and everywhere.
Oh man,
so that was fun. So when he got caught, that was fun. It's like, Oh, yeah, okay. And then he'd be laughing and giggling. So I don't think it was anything other than to see if he could get caught.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a typical grandfather kind of move. Is yeah, playing Monopoly or whatever and taking an extra square, or
Yeah.
oh, I don't feel like landing on go to jail. I'm gonna just cruise right over that and see if the kids catch it.
It was fun. It was fun. And we played cards a lot. I remember playing cards long before I even went to school. So I started school when I was 4 because I turned 5 in October. So I was the youngest kid in my class. And it was a lot of card playing before going to school. So that was fun. We were probably a little bit older. My brother's a year older than me. I think it was 5 or 6. And Grandpa Daddy had this really old Ford pickup truck. It felt probably like what you were describing, that tin can of an airplane. It's what it felt like. Everything rattled and sounded. They weren't cushy and spacious. They were spacious because there was just so much space, but there wasn't kind of all the features and things that they have in these trucks now today. But the funnest thing was, he'd say, well, let's go down to the store. We'd always be going down to the store to pick up something, and then there'd be the little treats for us, because if we came along, we soon learned that if, oh no, I don't want to go, I want to play with the cats and whatever, or my brother was down looking at the chickens or doing something, that the other person came back with a treat. So if you're ever around and he was going to the store, it's like, yes, I want to go. But the funnest thing is that he would let us drive. He would have his foot on the pedals, but we would be standing between his legs because we're only so tall, and could see over the dash, but he'd help us steer. So we'd steer as we went down like 3 or 4 kilometers down the road to the general store. So I got to drive when I was really, really young.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. It definitely sounds like a total grandpa thing to do, is whether it's a little penny candy or an ice cream or something like that when you're out.
Something, yeah. So we'd go down to McCluskey's, and that would be just so much fun. He didn't take us to the other town, the other direction, where the Stedman's was, like equivalent of like a dollar store, a Dollarama. He would take us that way, but it was a lot of fun. Or the other thing is, in that direction as well was where the bottle depot was. So sometimes it'd be like, let's go down to the shed first, and here, you carry up a couple of bottles, because I wasn't going to be allowed to carry a whole case. But then he'd carry up a couple of cases, and then he'd drop those off first and have some change so we could get our treats. And doing bottle returns, going up and down the roads on Saturday morning and Sunday morning, picking up bottles. We did a lot of fetching as well. So it was a lot of fun.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Now, do you remember what the feeling was when you were able to drive and go that short distance into town, but being there?
Oh my gosh, I felt so free. It was so fun. Oh, it was fantastic.
Oh yeah. Well, because I ask, because sometimes when I'm talking with people that grew up on farms or had similar experiences, it was like really kind of an empowering thing for an 8-year, well, most of the time they've been around 10, but like a 10-year-old being able to drive the farm truck out to where the combine is, back to the farmhouse to get lunch or whatever, knowing that they would put it in low gear, and it's just,
exactly.
The kids know how to do it, but it's at the same time you're thinking, man, I'm a big kid. I'm doing this thing.
I felt like I was on top of the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, I still try to, I just found out, and this might be ratting out my son, but he took his 6-year-old son and they went to a parking lot and was doing a little bit of the same thing with a pickup truck that they just sold, but was allowing him to kind of drive, or probably more doing the steering piece, around a big parking lot. But I think there's something to doing some of those kinds of activities.
Oh, it's just so much fun, and it's different. It's definitely something your parents are going to let you do. So it's it's a different connection. So it's really, really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. How did the relationship start to evolve and change as you were leaving primary school and moving into like middle school, teenage years with the grandfathers?
With Grandpa Daddy, he did talk about a lot of stuff. I don't remember him drinking a lot, but I remember seeing that shed full of beer bottles. And no matter how many we took in for deposit and got some cash for, there always seemed to be more. But I don't remember seeing him untoward with the drinking or drunk. And there seemed to be less as he got older. So I'm not sure. He mellowed out more, relaxed more, but he wasn't a talker. But he was always up for a game of cards. It was more so that kind of thing. So that would be Grandpa Daddy. And then busier with high school. So we didn't go out nearly as often because I had a summer job, worked weekends, that kind of thing. So didn't see him nearly as much once I think it was grade 9, I got a summer job. And so I didn't go out nearly as often. And he had friends and he didn't want to go to the camp and be around all the family and, your brother and, be able to do really nothing. So we didn't see them quite as much. And then my grandfather and Dad's dad in Nova Scotia in Pugwash, scary Granddad. He just had this aloof, austere kind of, it was his personality. He also wore black. He worked in a garage. He had a garage. He owned a garage, Stillman's garage in Pugwash. And he was a man of few words, and he loved his fish tank. His living room was like going to the pet store with the amount of fish tanks that he had. 3 of them were lined with almost floor to ceiling fish tanks. So there were a lot of different kinds of fish, and he'd be happy to tell you about that. But you don't touch the glass. You occasionally got to feed him, but that meant you had to get close to him for him to give you fish food. He always smelled of grease and oil and tobacco. So that was another kind of turnoff. But he died much younger, when I was much younger. So it wasn't, we didn't go down nearly as often, but it was, he became less scary as he got older because I realized, oh, that's just how he is. That's just how he talks. He wasn't a smiley, happy-go-lucky kind of guy. And that's how I see my dad is with my kids. So it's kind of, that was his personality. He just wasn't kid-friendly. Not that he was mean or nasty or anything, although he did always say, because his mother-in-law lived out in the front room, off the living room, you don't go into that room. She had been quite ill at the time, so my Nana was looking after her. But it just, the way he said it made it really kind of scary because it's like, your grandnan is in there. And it's like, okay. But, the room you could see had white curtains, and all I could think of was like ghosts. It was just the whole feeling.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that too, with maybe just some of the mannerisms that you remembered. And you talked about that a little bit, but some of those little things, because I think sometimes, definitely as men, we don't know what kind of vibes we're putting off. And we may not be intentional with what's going on, but sometimes those mannerisms that we have, just the wrong side of being a stoic, let's say.
Yes.
Is
and the other piece is I've seen it with my daughter and her grandfather, her paternal grandfather. He is a 6'3" man, booming voice. Even though in Newfoundland, hot-blooded kind of fellow, walked around 4 months of the year mostly shirtless, and wondered why my daughter would not approach him. Well, because he looked like Bigfoot. Kind of really very scary because, it's like, okay, go hug your granddad. And she'd run to me and hide behind my legs. So me holding her, she'd go over and he'd get a peck on the cheek. So what I noticed with my daughter, then I had the realization with my grandfather, Granddad, that we aren't intentionally looking and realizing what does the child need, so that they can have the relationship. Because I think Granddad wanted to have that relationship when I got a little bit older and it didn't seem so scary and I could sit in the living room and play or read a book and be quiet. there was always the shh, be quiet stuff. So it was kind of, children are better seen and, never heard. That if you really want to have that our relationship with your grandkids, you have to think about, like, what do your grandkids need? Not just going out and, like, not to change who you are, but to add in a piece that will be receptive for them to want to run up and hug you. Because as I can remember, my dad coming over to help me after my mom had passed, I had just had Jacob, and then I had the second baby, and my dad changed more diapers on my two kids than their father did. So, someone's, not that you have to do a lot of care and do all that kind of stuff, but I was on call doing a lot of work and away and having to study, and it's anteing up, being there so that it was comfortable for them. Sarah, when she could walk, would giggle and laugh and run up and run into Granddad's arms. And she was probably 4 before she did that with her pup. So that would be the same I've seen and how I felt about Granddad. And it's just what could I do so that I could be more welcoming, so that, as you said, intentionality of, I want to have this relationship and I don't see that it's developing. What could I do different? Not that you have to really be a whole different person, but there's just one thing. What one thing could I do that would, make them see me as a more receptive, person, so that they would want to run over and give me that big hug and their face light up as soon as they see them, instead of the eyes going wide. And it's like, I have to hug him. I have to kiss him. And later on, it was Sarah, my daughter, admitted, well, he smells, that's him being hot and shirtless. He was a sweaty kind of guy. So it's like, that's not hard to fix.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I was going to ask you too, from like a mom's perspective and somebody that's seen this and experienced it, what are a couple of other things that you think that grandfathers could do if we're feeling like we're coming off scary, or the kids really aren't wanting to engage with us, where we can kind of check ourselves a little bit?
Well, kids play on the floor, right? Kids will color on the floor. Kids sit on the floor. It's easy because there's nowhere for them to fall to. They may do that stuff and activities at the table, even when they're little or in a high chair. Don't stand above them. They're even, if you're going for a job interview, there's that power, that shift. Get down to their eye level. You're not big and scary when you're sitting on the floor, rolling a ball, laughing, and coloring with them. So things that you can do that's easy when it's little. Yes, you may have held them a lot when they were babies, and there's that piece. And then there's just take a notice. It's great to have a nice deep voice, but you can always tone it down a little bit. Not that you have to do. I'm not an advocate of the baby talk. I had a cousin whose mom let her. They did that and they talked like that, and my kids came 6 months later, but they developed language a lot faster because of, a baba. What's a baba? It's a bottle, a ball. You label your words. So there's not a baby talk per se, but it's toning down the voice, taking the volume down a notch. How would you talk to, your child when they're older and frightened, ideally, and not angry? What did you do? That is like, oh, okay, dear, what's so that little shift early on, so that it's, they'll recognize your voice, but as they get more into the recognizing and can come to you on their own, or they can, they can talk and say a few words and stuff. So get on the floor and play with them. Lie on the floor and let them crawl all over you. Then they're not going to think you're scary. And then, when they get picked up or whatever, then it's cool and it's fun, because Jacob always loved, my son had a different personality than my daughter. So he was all over Pop and climbing up, and he would climb a tree. He'd climb the wall. Kind of a challenging child to raise, but the difference was day and night between my son and my daughter and their relationship with the man who was a very big, loud, as Sarah said, she felt he was scary and smelly. Mm-hmm. So, always shower.
Well, I love that you brought up the getting down and the play aspect, because I think there's so much that children and even adults learn through play. What are
Oh,
the
yes.
rules? How do you know you've gone too far when you poke grandpa in the eye?
Yeah.
How do you know you've gone? You learn all these different little boundaries and these rules within a relationship through play, I think.
And the piece about life is, yes, you can have fun, sitting watching shows together, your favorite show, your favorite sports, and getting them interested in your sport, but playing it with them, doing things with them, even if it's a plastic bat and ball, mini sticks with a soft rubber ball, things that are easy
Mm-hmm.
and not expensive. I mean, it's not hard to do some of that stuff. And you do get to have fun, because when you have fun with somebody, it's a total different relationship. I never had fun with Granddad. I don't ever remember doing anything fun with Granddad. I remember when we were outside, they had a beautiful, huge swing set, because it was between two great big trees, and a merry-go-round. So that six or eight of the cousins could on it. Someone could always push around and run around the edge. And I don't know how he was a mechanic, so he's really smart on how to put that stuff together. But he never came out and pushed us on the swings, and never came out and watched us on the merry-go-round. There was also one of those kind of a little trapeze bar to pull yourself up and swing around and sit up on next to the swings. There was 3 swings, and it was just, we played amongst ourselves. Dad would come out and give us a push. Mom would come out and, sit on the grass and laugh and talk to us. Granddad never came out. I never played with him, ever. So, get down on the floor and play with your grandkids.
Oh yeah, no, that's awesome advice. Because to your point, that's where they're at. That's where you enter their world, let's say, in what their games and what their imaginations and stories that they have going on, where that lives.
And then they're receptive to seeing that, they want to join, so then you will want them to join, so then you will seek them out. And then as you get older, you seek them out. Like when we would go over to the camp, oh, Karen, is your night to make supper? And I go, yeah, I made it all. It's in containers. Mom, can you heat it up? I want to go down and see Grandpa Daddy, rather.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I want to go down and see how he's doing, and get in a game of cards.
Sure. Well, and we've mentioned cards quite a bit. I know that's a family thing, and that's a great thing. Were there any other activities that you guys used to do together that you can remember that built up that relationship?
I remember coloring a lot as well. My grandmother also had quilts hand quilted. So the great big monstrous frames, hand putting all those pieces together. Well, my Grandpa Daddy did quilting. My Grandpa Daddy had made quilts for us grandkids. So that was a really special thing. He also, I don't think it's popular now, but there was the paint on fabric stuff. Don't ask me what the name of it was. It came in a tube that you squeezed out. You penciled on your drawing, and then you colored it in. I have a quilt. I have a sewn quilt, as well as that quilt by Grandpa Daddy. And we got to, be underneath and play underneath. So it was like playing, it was a huge tent, because it was between the sofa and a couple of chairs balancing it up. And then they would be around quilting, and then they would roll it in a little bit and rotate it so they could get the other side. And Grandpa Daddy quilted. So I don't remember sewing with them. I remember when I got a little bit bigger, being at the quilting and doing some quilting, but not putting any of the pieces together.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was fun. But playing underneath while they all quilted was it's fantastic, because you could just, it was just,
oh yeah,
you using your imagination in your, either in your tent out in the forest somewhere, you could be in a spaceship, could be doing all sorts of things. It was just that, and you were amongst them all. So there would always be a handful of people around the quilt.
Well, and that's a ready-made fort. And then it was also made by the adults, so they couldn't come in and put those sheets up and,
No, don't tear it down.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they would, because there was the clamps on the corners for the wood frame. Well, and then they tacked it down so that it was also nice and well stretched. It was nothing for them not to enjoy to use an old sheet or, one of Grammy Mom's old dresses. And so you'd have one side would be like a door, because you'd have two dresses to go through. So it was fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome. We had talked, I think, one of our introduction calls, but you'd mentioned that as a mom, you had seen your father being a really cool grandpa, and I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, as I just mentioned, Dad did come over and help me finish with my training and be around. So when my mom had passed, so Dad did a lot of things with my kids, but Dad was quick to sit on the floor and play Lego and build blocks and ask questions. And because we like to play cards, Dad loves to play cards. Expanded his repertoire from 45s, auction, 120s, depending where you live, different names, it's the same game. House rules, always rule though. And to go fish and crazy eights. So he always played stuff like that, and he always laughed with them. Like not a cackly laugh, but it was just that fun-loving, gleeful laugh. And I can remember that playing Go Fish with the kids, and it would be like, Dad would remember where everything was, but Dad didn't always have to win. It'd be like, are you sure that's the card you want to pick up? And then it would be like, no, what card should I pick up? Well, how about one just below that? That looks like a good card. Or that one's turned sideways because you had it up and they forgot which one it was. That might be the lucky card. And then it's like, Granddad, that is the lucky card. And so they always had a lot of fun doing that. Dad colored with them. And one thing that my dad also loved to do was to garden, pick berries. We had lots of fun picking berries with him when we were growing up, but he did that early with my two. I don't remember being as young as my two kids were and going berry picking. I always loved it because, you put two in the basket and eat one. Good thing they didn't weigh us on the way out.
Right.
But he did that really early with the kids. I have started some scrapbooking in the last couple of years, something I'd never done before, and going through all my pictures, my 5 shoe boxes of pictures. And I have a lot of pictures of Jacob, and I remember him being out in the garden. He's 1.5 years. He's 2. He's 3. He's out. He's got the dirt on his hands and all over him, and they're both leaning. Dad's on his hands and knees doing something in the garden and looking up, and Jacob's next to him posing for the picture, loving being outside and playing in the dirt. So, something else kids love to do, boys and girls, because I loved out gardening and playing in the dirt, making mud pies outside and doing all sorts of things. And my two loved being out with Granddad, doing all that fun stuff and tending to the garden and weeding. And, then there was, of course, the flowers came in, and it was like picking flowers for Mommy. So, a lot of fun things, because then they could see the flow, and it's like, we worked hard. Oh, you didn't see it yet. You planted bulbs in the fall. When are they coming up? When are they coming up? And it'd be like in the spring, oh, look, they're starting. And then it would be when they bloomed, oh, now let's pick some for Mommy and take her in a handful of flowers. So that was this kind of full circle fun playing and sharing in the work that they did, the fun that they had doing it, to giving me a gift. So it was a lot of fun seeing Dad do all that. And I was just down to Dad's 85th birthday in New Brunswick. Drove down with my son and his girlfriend. My daughter was working, so she couldn't come. Yet here we are, after supper, sitting to the table, playing cards. And my dad, who's mellowed a lot over the years and a little bit more quiet now, and my stepmom, really, really nice, Nana Barb. So we're at the table, and it's like, well, Nana would say, well, finish up, and then we'd be sitting socializing and letting things settle. And Anna goes, I think it's time for a game of cards. I can do the dishes later. And my dad's face would light up, and Jacob would go, he'd have that, wiggly eyebrow kind of thing going. It was just lots of fun because Dad used to do that when he was younger. And we'd sit at the table. We sat at the table and played some cards and had some great fun. And, Jacob's girlfriend doesn't like playing cards, but, he made it fun. So she enjoyed to play a little bit. And we had the best time.
Oh, that's awesome. And I've got a question for you too, because there's seems to be a big difference between Granddad and your dad, how they were as grandfathers.
Oh, talk and cheese.
And
they're exact opposite.
Do you think that was just strictly personality, or do you think there's some things that your dad recognized that I'm going to be a little bit more intentional on?
Oh, yes, because I remember talking to Mom as to why is Granddad so scary? Why is Granddad so mean? I remember saying those words when I was really, really young. And not that he was mean. It was just his sense of humor was a little bit different. And not that he was mean, he just wasn't kid friendly and kid aware. But he was always a serious person. And Dad actually is a very serious person. But Dad, I think, made a point to spend more time with the kids. Now, I know I didn't get to see a lot of my dad growing up. He was working. He did his CGA by correspondence. If I want to spend time with my dad growing up, I watched and learned about golf, football, baseball, and horse racing. So I saw Secretariat win the Triple Crown.
Okay.
And I find horse racing kind of interesting. I love football. And the other one that I spend a lot of time with, because then it would be an evening break, would be hockey. So I'm a big hockey fan. I love lots of things. I mean, I know some things about sports that a lot of people don't know. Like, when I was in undergrad dating, and dating a baseball player, I would know what a balk was. And they'd go like, how do you know that? And the girls would go, what's a balk? What's a balk? And it's like, when they throw to home plate when you're trying to steal second base and you go after they make that motion towards home plate, you're not allowed to steal at that point. And it's like, Kara knows some stuff. So I think Dad made a conscious effort that he didn't do that with us. We were more, 8, 10 to, 14, those 5 or 6 years there, trying to spend some time with Dad. My brother wasn't interested in sports, so he and Dad don't have a great relationship. But I do have a decent relationship with my dad because I liked sports and I wanted to see that. And it just grew on me. And I still to this day love watching a hockey game, watching a football game. I know a lot of the differences between the CFL, the NFL, and the college ball stuff because he'd watch it all. So it was fantastic. So I think it was a conscious effort from how he saw his father with us as a granddad, as well as him with us as kids, and he took that opportunity to do a little bit more with my 2 children, for which I'm really grateful.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds great. And like I said, I think we've all talked about it a little bit, where if you throw a little intentionality at something, especially relationships with little kids, it has a huge payoff.
Absolutely. And you want to have that effect that later on, that they run up to you and say, Granddad, look what I found. Like, there's nothing better, right? Like when my kids did it to me, my kids did it to their granddad, it's just the nicest feeling because it's like they're interested in you, they love you. And then my dad's 85, like gratefully Dad's in great health, but because they've had that much fun. My daughter, who's 24, who wasn't able to go on the trip because of work, she herself has gone to visit since COVID and the year before COVID, paid for her airfare on her own to go visit her granddad, who lives 3,000 kilometers away.
Oh, wow.
That's because they've developed a relationship.
Yeah. Well, and that's an important reminder too, and what a great, I don't know, testament to that relationship is when you have somebody that's young that has all sorts of plans and friends and activities that they want to spend their time and money to come out and see you.
Holiday time from work.
Right.
You only get 2 or 3 weeks a year, and she takes a week when she only had that little bit of holiday time and went to see her grandfather.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, Karen, I've had you on for a little bit. I am going to put
time flies.
links into our previous conversation about the fertility work that you do. But
Yes.
do you want to take just a couple minutes and talk about Baby Making Genius and what you do?
Oh, well, thank you. Yes, I'd love to. Well, I help women who are struggling to get pregnant, either from infertility or recurrent pregnancy loss or any other reason, if they haven't even tried it and just got into a relationship or decide at 40, yeah, I never wanted to have kids, and now it's like, now I do. I help women have their babies. So I help them from my knowledge of having been an obstetrician gynecologist. I can help them advocate and navigate that piece, but I work with them so that they can move through their fears and their doubts and what they feel has been failures to date so that they can go from dreaming of having that baby to actually holding that baby in their arms.
Oh, that's awesome. And that's so important today with, we've got friends of friends that are struggling and going through that, and having somebody that can talk the science, but then also talk to the heart is huge.
Yes. And the heart and the mind are really, really important pieces. It's, they're actually the bigger pieces rather than the history, the story, or what's going on in the medical world. So there's so much more that women couples can do that they're really not aware of. And we've just kind of dummied it down and kind of let it go to science and medicine. And there is so much more.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And we could get off on that subject because I think there's so much of that stuff where it's like, if you don't have data, then that's the way you have to go and that's what you have to do. And it's like, there's more to it. There's the universe, there's the person, there's the everything. There's everything part of that mix.
There is so much more. Exactly. It's like that relationship with your grandparent. You've got to develop that relationship more so with yourself. And we're on a rat race of work, career, busy, crazy, bills, going, doing, acquiring. So it's making a shift, making that intentionality coming back into play here.
Absolutely. And Karen, where can people best find you and connect with you if they want to learn more about Baby Making Genius?
Exactly. I have, I'm on Instagram at Believe to Conceive, getting more of this social media savviness going because it's came in much more popular. I'm a little bit older in that generation, so learning to work with that. The website is thebabymakinggenius.com. And on both places, there's ways to find out how to contact me. My WhatsApp number is there. My calendar there is to book I'm always happy to have a free call with somebody to see what's going on, what your needs are, and if there is anything I can do or where I could, otherwise direct you, help boost you up and empower you on your journey so that you can have that baby, because I had struggled and I was told I would have struggles, and for a while I did, and I made all those shifts away from the medical model and I got my 2 babies and I'm so pleased.
Yep.
So pleased.
That's awesome. And we'll be sure to put links in the show notes because I know people are out doing all sorts of things while they're listening to this. So
absolutely. They're not there with a pen and paper. They're probably riding their bike or walking the dog or getting something else in or driving in the car. So don't stop to write this down. Enjoy the show and go back and look.
Yep, absolutely. And Karen, thank you so much for being on the Cool Grandpa podcast. I really have enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much, Greg. It's been a pleasure to be here. And just having had that recent visit with my dad, it's just been going back and thinking about all these other great memories. It's just been a pure joy for me. Thank you so much.
Oh, that's awesome. I really enjoyed having this conversation with Karen. It was fun to connect with her again. It was great learning more about Granddad and Grandpa Daddy. I also enjoyed learning about how serious her and her family are when it comes to cards and how that's used to install a sense of play as well as connections within the family. It was great also hearing her perspective about how sometimes us as grandpas, and even I think as fathers, can sometimes do things that are a little off putting to the kids. Not that we mean to, but of course, being outside and getting hot and sweaty, whether you're working on cars or mowing the grass or doing whatever, and then wanting, the little kids to come up and give you big old hugs, that can not be, the most enjoyable from a kid's perspective. And so I enjoyed hearing her perspective on what it takes to really help us as, like I said, grandfathers and fathers be able to connect with the little kids. I loved her advice about getting down on their levels and playing with them on the ground and letting them climb all over us and really build that connection through both physical play as well as, of course, as we talked about, the playing of cards, right? Or any kind of board games. Maybe there's a game that you and your family always play when you get together and build those connections and tease each other when somebody's maybe trying to cheat or bend the rules a little bit. It brings out so many fun memories, and it brings out a great way to build relationships. So I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. That's a great way to help build up this messaging that grandfathers are important. And until next time, remember to stay cool.